Hi, Timothy. Welcome to Movie Junk. How are you?
Good, and yourself?
Doing well, doing well. We have Timothy Murphy joining us today, who fans know from so many epic shows and films: Sons of Anarchy, True Detective, National Treasure, Appaloosa, the SWAT series. I can't thank you enough for joining us today.
Not at all. My pleasure.
And again, thank you for making the time. And the fan in me wants to jump right into all these epic roles, but this is your first time on our show, and I'd be doing our fans a disjustice, but would love to hear sort of how it all started for you. Now, you hail from Ireland, if I'm not mistaken. What was it like growing up?
Growing up in Ireland, it was good. I come from six kids, like three boys, three girls, and my parents, and small town on the west coast of Ireland. It was a nice upbringing. I had a very bad stutter though when I was a kid. I could hardly speak, so that lasted till I was about 16. So the fact that I'm an actor is nearly a miracle, I think. But growing up, and there was no really outlets for acting when I was growing up. It was you just went to a Christian Brothers school, and there was corporal punishment where you got the crap beaten out of you, and that was it. But there was no outlet for acting or anything when I was growing up. My mother had done acting when she was a kid, amateur dramatics. I remember her telling me one time. So that's the only connection I had with acting growing up.
Were there any early, inspirations or aspirations like films or actors? Because you've also been in quite a few Western films as well. Were there any aspirations of any of these classics growing up?
Well, as a kid, we'd no iPads or videos or anything like that. You had two channels on TV, and they didn't even start until about 6 o'clock in the evening. So westerns were always big action kind of things. I suppose growing up in the 60s, when I was a kid in the 60s, yeah, westerns were a big influence. Even as a kid, our games were like Cowboys and Indians, which is so on PC now, but that's what we called it, Cowboys and Indians, and we go shooting each other. And even if you go back to those, see things in the 60s, you see like cowboy outfits or Indian outfits. So it was like so westerns, yeah, I'd be a big fan. Well, I'm always a big fan of history, and I'm very much interested in the immigrant story coming to the America and the West, and the Native American story. Because they're all stories of conquests and survival, and it goes out through history. All the same thing happened in Ireland, hundreds of thousands of years ago or whatever. So.
Definitely, definitely. And I mentioned you were in Appaloosa, which was with Ed Harris, Viggo Mortensen. I mean, amazing Jeremy Irons, amazing cast. And
Yeah,
to me, this is just a criminally underrated Western movie. I mean, I love this movie. I actually saw this in theaters. It was almost 17 years ago now, oh six,
yeah.
and really, really loved Appaloosa. What was it like, working on that film? And loved any stories from the cast would be great.
It was amazing. I mean, I remember it distinctly. I think it was Labor Day. I remember Ed gave me a call, and he said, "I want you to be a part of Appaloosa." And it was one of the very few times I don't get that excited when I get something. I say, oh well, that's great. It'll feed the family or feed me for another while. But in that particular situation, we done National Treasure uh, two together. So we knew each other, but I still auditioned, and yeah, he called me to say I had this part, and I was delighted with it. Um, from the set, I suppose myself and Jeremy used to hang out a lot because we were the bad guys. He was the lead guy, bad guy, and I was his underling. And so we'd have the same kind of days off. So we go off on adventures around New Mexico. And I found that fascinating at the time, New Mexico. Riding horses. It was just such a great time. And I remember there was one scene I had to ride uh, fast into the side of a river, so you're kind of galloping or cantering into the side of until you get to the side of this river. But I've a bunch of rodeo stunt cowboys next to me, and I'm leading them, and I can barely friggin' ride, so I'm holding on for dear life at the time, you know. And then you have to stop and give lines, so it all worked out in the end. But I was just at times I was just holding on, even though like I'd gone to a trainer and worked with them, and they thought I was great and I fine, and I thought I was fine as well until you come up riding with these guys and you think, oh my god, this is different altogether. I'm a much better rider now actually than I was then. But yeah, it was great. Living in staying in New Mexico, you know, studying, you know, the Native American history there, like the Navajo and the Apache and all that. And I went back later when I was working there, I think on MacGruber maybe, and I went I I got a Navajo guide to bring me through Canyon de Chelly, right through Canyon de Chelly in northern Arizona or New Mexico there, and around the Four Corners, and that was such an amazing experience, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I was gonna ask, I was like, how much of that was you versus stunts? And yeah, I mean, like I imagine the prep work that goes into, shooting a Western is quite extensive, right? And can be a little dangerous too, right? It's not just, fake shooting. It's the work that goes into it is drastic.
It is. It's always. I mean, it's always there. There's always the unknown when you're dealing with animals anyway, you know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how much you train or whatever. I noticed they're getting very strict on that now. And when I remember working up in Canada and something, I think it was Damnation, and they actually didn't allow the actors to even canter on the horses. They would only allow you walk on the horses. So I think with insurance and everything, and I remember Johnny Depp when he did the Lone Ranger, they were up in Canyon de Chelly and Monument Valley. I was in that as well, but I wasn't in this particular section of it. But he fell off one of the horses he was riding, and he was lucky he wasn't killed, you know. So I think they're getting more strict on allowing actors because of insurance, especially the stars, to go very fast on a horse. You know, it's usually if it's long distance, you've the stunt riders, but even close ups, I think back then they were more lax than they are now, is what I'm saying. You know?
Yeah, the industry is, always evolving, right? And hopefully for the better, and safety is always important because we need you guys to be healthy to keep making movies for us, right? So
definitely, if we ever make a movie again with this
I
strike
know,
going, you know. So.
I know. Hopefully we get this resolved soon. And one thing, with your performances, right? I mean, you're such a multi-dimensional actor, right? We and for some reason, we love seeing you as the villain, right? But you can do so many different roles. And one of your most popular characters, right? The Butcher of Belfast, Galen O'Shay and Sons of Anarchy, one of my all-time favorite shows. And you joined in season 4, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Mhm.
But we already had an Irish presence on the show in the earlier seasons. Were there any talks of you joining any earlier, or was season 4 the first time that you had an opportunity to audition or join the cast?
No, season 4 was when I had the opportunity to join. I was a bit put out actually because of the earlier story when I heard there was because I knew a lot of the actors that worked on the earlier Irish story, and so and I didn't get seen, and they wouldn't see me, and they weren't interested, and I was making calls and all that. I says, what the hell is going on here, you know? But no, they didn't see me for at that time, and then later on, of course, I got a much better role than the role I would have got back then, probably, you know.
Definitely, definitely. And I mean, was this just a natural fit, right? Did you even have to do any acting for this role, or?
You have to do acting. I mean, I'm from
Yeah,
Kerry, the southwest of Ireland. This character, he's from Belfast, you know,
yeah, yeah.
and So it's a different accent, and but I like the character. I understood the character, and he's an ex-IRA kind of gunman, and I've met guys like that. I've met, not like that. I have met guys that were ex-IRA gunmen, but uh but the funny thing about it is, your first day on set, the guys, because they're a well-established gang, they're not overly friendly. They'll nod to you and things. And my first scene, I have a big monologue where I have to tell the all the guys in the Sons of Anarchy, all their lead actors there, how it's gonna be, and I talk down to them and talk shit to them, and so you have to go in there and prove yourself, basically. So they're waiting to see, is he able to pull this off or not? So there's pressure there. There's no question, and you have to go in with an attitude in the back of your head, like you obviously you have to prepare the monologue, but you have to go in with an attitude like, I'm better than you guys. I couldn't give a shit here, and this is, you're going to do this. So yeah, but after that, then the attitude of the cast is totally different to you once you proved yourself. Now you're part of the gang and you're one of them and stuff, But until then, there's no overly they're not overly affectionate or whatever, So
Exactly. Yeah, like we've interviewed quite a bit of the Sopranos cast, and with that show, right? I mean, right at season 2, the show was a hit, right? And we interviewed folks that joined in the later seasons, and I was like, was there any added pressure, joining an already established show, right? And for your character, it's like, you just, right when we saw your character from the beginning, you hit it from the ground up, and we knew right when we saw you that you were going to be a problem for the Suns, right? And you were for several seasons. Now, with the way that it's no spoiler, right? We know the ultimate fate of Galen O'Shay, but when a character gets whacked, I don't know if that's the right word. How
yeah.
much of a notice do you typically know? Is it something that you know earlier in the season? Do we know kind of the day or a few days before? How does that work?
They usually tell you they usually tell you probably 2 weeks before, a week before, whatever, or when you're about to get the next script, you'll usually get a telephone call to say, look, Tim, we're writing, it's the end of the character. It comes in this episode, so not too much of an advance notice. It's not like, well, Tim, this is the start of the season, and this is that you're going to die in this season. No, I wasn't told like that. You're just told about a week beforehand, or 2 weeks, or when you get the script, maybe sometimes,
Yeah,
But I mean, there was one time in Snowpiercer, I remember I was doing that you're it looks like you're dead, but you're not sure. And then people are saying, oh no, you're not, you'll be coming back, and oh no, you're not coming back. And it's like, make up your mind, guys. It's like, yeah.
I know, you had several scenes with Ron Perlman, right, who we knew as Clay. And for
Yeah.
me, he's always been Hellboy, for me, right? So yeah, really, really loved, his performance. And what was it like working with Ron Perlman?
Ron's great. I mean, he's a great actor, and he's a great human being as well. He's an all around great guy, working class kid from the Bronx, I think, in New York. I lived in the Bronx myself years ago before I ever acting and worked in construction and stuff. But he's yeah, it's great. It was great working with Ron, and it's always great working with good actors, or actors that you admire, you appreciate, and they appreciate you and admire you. So it was great working on the show, and Kurt is a great writer, of course. He created the show. It's all out of his head, all these characters, and they're quite a great bunch of guys, and what a great job for those guys, all the series regulars. I mean, they get up on a summer morning, and they free Harley Davidson motorcycles to ride to work, and they ride to work, do their work, and then ride home in the summer on a summer evening. It was like, I don't think I think those guys must realize, and they must definitely realize that they'll rarely get a job as good as that, you know.
Yeah,
And then the fact that not just that it was a cool job, but it was considered amongst the cosmos as one of the coolest shows on TV and something everybody would like to have been part of, you know. So.
definitely, definitely. Like, I know for myself, like once the Sopranos show ended, I was like, there's nothing that's going to be able to top this. And for me, my all-time list is The Sopranos, Breaking Bad, and Sons of Anarchy. Those are the three shows. Doesn't matter what episode, what point, if it's on, if it starts at season 2 when I first see it again, I got to knock out everything up until the finale again. And I've definitely seen Sons probably over and over, maybe like 20 times.
I
And
love
amazing, amazing show. And not just saying this because we have you on, but if there was one character, outside of the bike club that I would like to see more of, if there was ever, a prequel series or something that can be expanded upon, it was your character. The Irish, lineage and story, because the ties that it had to the bike club, there was so much more that I felt like we could get deeper, right? When Jax's dad obviously went there, and we had that season that was dedicated to it. But I'd love to see your character in sort of a prequel, and then maybe right before we saw him, when we see him with the Sons.
Yeah, I mean, me myself, I think that would be a very interesting situation, you know, and yeah, getting out of arms dealing in Ireland and doing it in America, and because a lot of some ex-IRA guys ended up in Colombia with the FARC, the guerrillas, you know, and so.
I do want to also touch on some of your current projects and upcoming projects. I know that you were just in Mobtown with John Travolta, which just recently came out as editor. What was it like working on that set? Or any funny stories that you could share with us?
Mobland, can you see me
Mobland, of
now?
course.
Mobland, yeah, that was a guy, a producer I know, called me and said, "Would you be interested in um in doing a few days on this movie? All the scenes are with John Travolta." And I said, "Of course I would. I mean, God, just to be doing, scenes with John Travolta, who I think is just an icon, an amazing actor. Ever since, I mean, just that scene alone of him walking to in Saturday Night Fever and on the streets of Brooklyn was like phenomenal, you know. So yeah, working with him was fantastic. And I mean, my part is small, you know. I'm his deputy sheriff, but the scenes really worked really well. I thought. I think it was written very differently for a very different character than me personally. So I had to do a bit of work. I was coming from one movie in Missouri and flew in then to do this in Atlanta. So I hadn't much time to prepare, but I had to work on to make sure the character worked for me in this, and I thought we did a very good job, the two of us, and it was such good fun working with John. He's beautiful person. I mean, really beautiful person, and we just talked about our kids basically, and played these cool scenes together, very low key, you know. But so I thought it worked well.
Yeah, I mean, he just keeps making, amazing content, every year. And, just he's one of the all-time, legends, in the industry. We've been fortunate to see all of his, amazing work. I mean, for me, Look Who's Talking, that series is my favorite series of the projects that he's
Yeah,
done. I might get some laughs there, but I love the Look Who's Talking series. But yeah, definitely. I mean, when I saw that you had just recently worked together. I'd love to hear a John Travolta story. We actually also just recently we've interviewed Robert Miano, who was also
right.
in the film as well. He's been
He
on our
was in it, and I didn't know he was in it either. And we're both members of the Actors Studio, and I was I think I was in Santa Monica one day. We bumped into each other, and I says, "Yeah, I just got back from that place doing this little independent." And he says, "I just got back from that place doing this independent," and we it turned out we both were in the same movie. Yeah.
Now, one question that I always love, asking, the actors, actresses that come on our show, we always love talking about obviously your guys' projects, but whenever you're not working, what are you guys binge watching? What are some of the shows that you watch from the fans' lens? Or was there a recent movie that you recently watched that you really enjoyed?
Um. No, I mean I don't. For me, I don't watch a whole lot of stuff to tell you the truth. Most of the stuff I watch would be documentaries. I love if I get a good one, obviously. Um, to be honest with you, a friend of mine, Eddie Irvine, he drove for Ferrari with Michael Schumacher many years ago in the early 2000s, not in the 1990s as well. And I never really, paid that much attention to Formula One or anything to tell you the truth. And and then I said, everyone's telling me, you should watch this Formula One thing. It's they brought it into America with Netflix and everything. So I watched a whole season of it, and I thought it was fantastic, and it gave me added respect for for Eddie in a lot of ways, So yeah.
Definitely,
But that's
definitely.
what that's what I've been watching. But it's usually uh I was gonna say as well, I have two young kids. I started late with my children, so they are 10 and 8. So I don't get a lot of chance to watch to watch stuff, yeah.
Definitely. Well, congrats on that as well. And do you think that you might push them on maybe wanting to get into the business, or will you let them kind of organically choose it on their own?
I'm not one to push my kids in any direction, and neither were my parents with me. Now, some people might say that's right, some people might say that's wrong, but that's the way I am. I'm quite laid back, easygoing. If they want to do that, or they're that way inclined, no problem at all. Sean, my son, seems to be more inclined to doing something like that, I think, than Saoirse, my daughter. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. And I know you probably can't touch too much on it, but are you able to share some of your upcoming projects that we are likely to see this upcoming year or the remainder of the year?
Yeah, this year, I mean, it's a very funny situation where you can't even. I mean, I can talk about the things I've done because they're not from the big studios and stuff.
Yes.
But everybody's terrified to say anything about anything, whether it crosses the rules or not. And as
Mm-hmm.
my own personal opinion is, the two sides need to sit down and just get this frigging thing going, because calling each other names or saying we're going to keep going until you're going to lose your house or your medical, and the other crowd saying these greedy, CEO conglomerates. I mean, guys, you got to sit down and work it out, because people are hurting here. A lot of people are really hurting, but um
Yeah,
I wish it would end, and we'd get everything we wanted. But you in any negotiation, you're not going to get everything you want. But
exactly.
my upcoming projects, I did a thing called Apophenia. Geez, it must be a year or two ago. I'm amazed it hasn't come out yet. So that's one thing, and I played two characters in that. It's a kind of psychological horror, ghost story kind of thing, more than horror story. And yeah, I played two characters. I play a jester and a kind of farmer, and that was a very interesting thing to do. And then I did a thing called On Felt down in Miami with a Brazilian actress and an Italian American director, Lorenzo. Uh, so yeah, that's another one thing coming out on Felt at some stage, I would imagine. What else? The biggest thing I did, I think, with that I really enjoyed as well was Guns Up. It's called. I just did this movie with Kevin James and Christina Ricci, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, and what's the other?
That sounds like an exciting project too.
That was great. It was a great character, really you know, a bad guy, but a very kind of black comedy bad guy, you know, missing
Yeah.
one eye. Uh, I good fun doing that, actually. As I did good fun recently. I think recently an episode of Tacoma PD came out where I played, or Tacoma FD came out where I was playing a Belgian gangster from Seattle or something. But it was, yeah, this ludicrous character, but it was good fun playing him. You know?
That's also what I forgot to ask. I mean, you do so many different accents. I mean, you play just as good a Russian as you do an Irish, right? And like you do all these different accents, and it's like, how do you have this, depository of all these? Is it do you just go in and say, hey, this is this character, and I'm going to practice it, or can you just naturally do all these?
Well, some I can naturally do because I've done them a bunch of times, and other accents, if I haven't done them, I practice them and then I do them. But I love practicing like accents or characters. I even don't call them accents. I usually have to get the kind of character first before the accent kind of melds in as well, and then you blend the two of them together. But just doing an accent on its own is a way more difficult than if you have a kind of the character there as well, and then it kind of flows out of you in that way. So it's more natural, I think, you know. So yeah.
Definitely, definitely. And Timothy, I want to be respectful of your time, and I always like to, save some room for round two, and hopefully we can have you on many, many more times. But I just personally want to say thank you for making the time to meet. I've been wanting to set this up for quite some time, and really, really enjoyed walking through, some of these roles. And as some of your upcoming projects come out as well, I'd love to be honored to have you back and talk about them again. But just want to thank you for joining our show today.
I'd love to come back anytime, and it was such a pleasure and great talking to you, and great energy and great vibe, I thought, you know. So
Thank,
fantastic.
thank you so much. Thank you very much, and looking forward to talking soon.
Sounds good. Take care.
You take care. Bye bye.